Well, yeah, he established in 2003.
2003.
And then recently they just launched the Falcon X missile to American astronauts from a commercial-based launch from America. And that was the first time since 2011, I think.
And I think that was
launched from American grounds.
That was also the first time NASA partnered up with an outside business on a space expedition.
Yeah, because the reason why they stopped the space shuttle programs was because they just ran out of money and resources. They just got to a point where it's like, what's the value of constantly sending people every 2 years or 5 years? You know what I mean? So when you have a company like SpaceX and Elon Musk can supply resources, money, the top notch of people in those industries, why wouldn't you go and continue on those missions? But I think that, I mean, it happened during the pandemic and a lot of things going on. It was kind of not overseen, but was it overseen?
Underlooked.
Yeah, it was underlooked.
Underlooked, for sure.
And that was a big accomplishment for America, and people don't even talk about that.
Huge accomplishment.
And that was just, 3 months ago or 2 months ago?
You know
what I mean? So something like that is just... Well, okay, so back to the point is the Falcon X missile, the innovative process of it is that when it launches up to space, it sends the cabin and the astronauts to the space shuttle, for instance, what just happened, but anywhere else it's going to go. And the idea is when it launches, the rockets come back and they land on a drone platform that they basically calculated so you can basically keep using, recycling the infrastructure of the missile.
Okay.
So like that's already saving millions of dollars for NASA and SpaceX.
Right.
And then just think about that. I mean, because it's the money, which is why NASA stopped all the space travel.
Right.
So then now you're saving millions of dollars.
It makes it more accessible.
But it also speeds up the process.
Right.
Where, okay, well, if you didn't think we were going to be here today, 2 years ago, it's probably double the amount of the process that's going to go into it, you know?
Well, I think the cool thing about that is, you say it's more cost effective, it's a quicker way to get into space. So that's going to allow for more research and more expeditions into space, leading to more of, or just kind of making the idea more of a possibility of colonization on outside world planets or moons or systems and things like that, which is crazy to think about. And I know it's he wants to get to Mars by 2030.
2030.
Which is insane.
His plan is to send, I think it's 2 cargo ships to Mars. And the idea of how to get to Mars would be, I think they want to send some type of spacecraft that will orbit the moon. So that when they send the cargo ships in, I think they want to do it like a spaceship of astronauts, like a cargo of, or a cabin of astronauts with the cargo.
Right, yeah.
So the idea would to attach to the spacecraft orbiting the moon, basically have that launch them to Mars, which would take, I think, like 6 to 8 months just to get from the moon to Mars.
Right.
Get there, and then their plan is, he has... there's a lot of very out there processes and how you can start to colonize Mars within 10 to 30 years.
Right. So we'll say within the next 5 years.
Yeah, I would say within the next 5 years, his plan is to do that, to send cargo ships out there that basically just has resources and infrastructure to start establishing on the planet.
Right.
Come back, and then he wants to go back again with a bigger cabin of astronauts, more cargo, go there.
And just start building.
And then basically start building from there. Obviously, it's not
crazy.
Wouldn't be commercial based
yet.
But he said by 2030, which is it's probably very far-fetched to think by 2030, but
if someone's going to do it, he's going to be the man to do it.
And it goes back to my point where there's philosophies to keep using materials so it's cost
it's more cost effective to recycle the material for the launch and the shuttles and things like that.
So who knows? I mean, it could be very possible by 2030.
Another thing we talked about too about Elon Musk is he wants to make space travel and transportation more accessible to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And he's facing heavy criticism within the space community, specifically people like Neil Armstrong, who don't approve of the idea. And there's one interview with him, and it's been circulating on social media, especially around the SpaceX launch, of him getting so upset that he's actually crying that these figures who he considers heroes of his don't approve of his idea and are trying to shoot him down, which is kind of crazy to think about, considering you would think those guys would be so up for space travel being available to somebody like you or me.
Right.
But that brings me to my question: do you think making space travel accessible to the public, you think that's a good idea?
I don't know, because if you look at it like, okay, if you slowly start building into it and the public starts to get used to it, but it's just, I don't know, when was airplanes and commercial flights established?
Right.
Like, when was that even established?
Right.
Early
1900s. You know what I
mean? So they might have thought the same way about aircraft travel, commercial travel, compared to what we think of space travel. In the next 40 years, it can be the most effective way to travel the planet.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because the idea is to be able to take a commercial spacecraft and fly basically out of the atmosphere. And it's basically kind of like dropping a nuke on somebody. Fly out of the atmosphere and then right to Japan or something in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, it'd be a quicker form of travel.
Yeah.
I'd say
again, think about that. Okay, so it does become accessible to the public.
Right.
How much are those tickets going to be?
Oh my God, probably extremely expensive at first.
Right.
At first, they would need to find a way to. I think the biggest what's the word I'm looking for? The biggest, I guess, setback or the biggest obstacle for this kind of task would be safety. You know what I mean? And how would you make something as intricate as launching a rocket into space commercial based? You know what I mean? How would you make that accessible to the public? And how would you make it cost effective?
I have no idea.
Right? Like that is a feat that seems impossible, but his whole philosophy is if you make something that's impossible possible, then everything will just fall into place.
Right. Then it adds to what he's trying to do, and just with everything, with Tesla, with this other thing we have now is the Neuralink device that he wants to, I guess, put more research into.
Right.
But it just adds to he thinks out of the box.
Yeah. Figuratively
and literally, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that goes back to my point is like he's not a rational person to have a conversation with, because he's always going to try to think. I guess it's a very optimistic way to look at things, but it's also at a point like how far can you take majority of the concepts that you construct?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's a great thing and a very scary thing, but he also has the resources to have everything become more possible than the average Joe, because he's worth billions of dollars.
Right, exactly. He definitely has the tools at his disposal. It's just a matter of making sure that he's not going to make a mistake along the way, especially if he's going to try and make space travel commercial-based business, and a way for the public to, a way to reinvent public transportation.
Right.